good morning, and welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is in relation to April 16th celebration of the Emancipation Act that was signed into law in 1862 by President Abraham Lincoln. That freed about 3,300 African slaves in the District of Columbia. This happened in about 3 years before the 1865 ratification of the 13th Amendment that eventually freed all slaves in America. So this April 16th Emancipation Day has become a celebration by the African American communities and Black people in the District of Columbia to commemorate that great day of freedom for Blacks and Africans in the District of Columbia, as well as in the United States of America as a whole. So you had a mayor, Maria Bowser, who also happens to be an African American woman, to become the mayor, first African American woman to become mayor of the District of Columbia, which happens also to be the official seat of government of the United States of America. So that's a heck of an achievement by Maria Bowser to be a woman, a Black woman, as well as the mayor of the capital city of the United States of America, the very place that Abraham Lincoln has to sign into law a declaration to end slavery against her ancestors. That is a heck of an achievement. So kudos to her. But anyway, so today's subject basically is going to center on how far we as Africans and African Americans and Black people in the diaspora living in the United States of America have come in terms of their Black success in various areas, in terms of academics, sports, entertainment, inventions, and all of that. Even though we've gone through a lot of things recently, especially when we talk about police brutalities, inequalities, discrimination, and all of that. And we have come a long way to get to where we are in American society. We can also not take away the fact that there have been some positives within the Black community in America and so on and so forth. Now, looking back at American history and looking at where we are today, especially celebrating the Emancipation Day in the District of Columbia, we cannot dispute the fact that we have come a long way. In the sense that if you look back 50, 60 years ago in American history, there were places African Americans could not go. There were places African Americans could not even sit and dine. Offices that African Americans could not hold, positions in government, in military, which were sanctioned by the federal government and the various states in the country. But today, especially since 50 years ago after the Civil Rights Act in the late 60s, all the way to today, and you look at the achievement and the success of African Americans in America, there's no way we can deny the fact that we have come a long way and have played a crucial role in America today as we see it. Because if you look back to the history of Africans in America, the unfortunate past, which is about slavery, Blacks, Africans being brought from Africa as slaves, with the suffering, the death, cultures being stripped away from them, all of that stuff. And then to see where African Americans and Black people are in America today, where they are in this society, it will be an understatement to say that that is beyond any human thinking. With all the suffering, with all the situation that we have to go through in terms of discrimination, abuses, rapes, and all of that stuff, and to see where African Americans are in American history today, it will be an understatement to say that it has to be a really, really resilient soul in these people to be where they are today. And let's not forget, America as we see today would never have been America without the African slave. It was the African slave who built this country. It was the African slave who built this country, and everybody in this country today enjoying the benefits of America today has to thank the African slave. Because if not for the African slave, the United States of America today will never be what it is today. You can talk about technology, you can talk about agriculture, everything. It was no sheer coincidence that when the Europeans, having been trading with the Africans, the Portuguese, the British, the French, having been trading with the Africans, and when they came here, decided to come to Africa and bring slaves to come help them develop this country. It was no sheer coincidence, because they knew they needed that technology in terms of agriculture and all that stuff that they had seen in Africa for them to be able to develop this continent. So it just didn't happen in America. It happened in Brazil too. You can never talk about Brazil with the African slave in Brazil. It's the same thing in Brazil. The Portuguese sent all these slaves to Brazil, and it was the African slaves that developed Brazil too. So it's a heck of achievement for Africans and Black people in the diaspora in all of America to be proud of what they have contributed to what it is today in America. Now, I also want to touch on something that might be controversial to some people, I don't know. But with all that said, if you look at where we are as people, I'm talking in terms of people, I mean the Black people, the African Americans in America, and where we are today, I would say about 50 years, for the past 50 years, there's no dispute, in my opinion, that America has been the best place for Africans and African Americans and Black people in the diaspora. The United States of America have given so much to the African Americans, the Blacks from the Caribbean, or Africans coming from Africa recently to America, than any country on this earth today. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because having traveled around to almost every continent and having experienced different cultures from in Europe, America, Africa, and all that stuff, and looking at what America has been able to offer the African and the Black people in America, and looking at basic various experiences in other parts of the world, there's no country on this earth today that I know of that has given so much to the Black man than the United States of America. I mean, maybe you might know some countries around the world, but I don't know. I mean, I understand it. I get it. America, outside of even talking about just Blacks, has also given so much to other minorities from other parts of the world. Asians, Indians, Latin America, all of that. It's true. That's a fact right there. But if you look at the African American or the Black man in America, and you look at the successes, all right, you look at the successes of Black people in America, their contributions to America, and the level of success that has come about because of some of the acts, the laws that were passed within the last 50 years. And looking at where Black people are in terms of governance, academics, sports, there's no dispute. There's no dispute that this country has given so much to the African American, to Blacks in America, than any country on earth. And I get it. I get it. People will say that, oh, I know of this country here and there. I get it. I mean, every country has given something to minorities from various backgrounds, from various places and all that stuff. But if you look at the totality in terms of the benefits that African Americans and Black people have benefited within this country, the United States of America, I don't think there's any country that will even come close. I mean, look, let's take away in terms of racial discrimination and all that stuff. I get all of that stuff. I'm not talking about racial discrimination. I'm not talking about, I get it. It exists. It's not going to go nowhere. I mean, I was in Africa recently, and I was talking to some people from Germany, and they were talking about, oh, in America, they're killing Black people, and they do all of that, and they're discriminating. Look, I get all of that. Yes, it happens. And this thing has been going on in America for how many years? Ever since Africans were brought here. This thing has been going on in America ever since Africans were brought into America. And it's not going to change. There are going to be people who are always going to hate people for who they are, how they speak, or where they're coming from. You go to our various African countries, it's there. We have Africans hating on other Africans. And we are not talking about white people hating on Black people. You know, we talk about South Africans hating on Nigerians, discriminating against Nigerians because of the way they sound, or because they are from other parts of Africa. It happens in Ethiopia. It happens in every African country. Tribalism, where people discriminate against each other because of what tribe or ethnicity they are. So when you talk about discrimination, racism, and all that stuff, it's going to be everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So I understand when people talk about George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and all that death and the killing of Black people by police and cops in America. I get all of that. And they are horrible. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm also talking about the successes, which we also have to acknowledge. With all the brutal things that have happened to our people in America, we also have to acknowledge that we've also come a long way and have been very successful in this country. It hasn't been perfect, but at least, like I stated earlier, I have not seen any country on this planet, Earth, that has offered so much to the African American or Black American than the United States of America. The United States of America, if you're not talking about Barack Hussein Obama, who became president in 2008. Outside of Barack Hussein Obama becoming the first African American to become president of this great country, you look at a person like Clarence Thomas. This is a Black man that came from the Gulags. The Gulags were slaves who escaped to some islands off of South Carolina. And growing up as a Gulag, all the way to go to one of the most prestigious schools in America, Yale University, and to end up sitting on the United States Supreme Court. That's a heck of an achievement. This story cannot be told in every other country in the world. And outside of that, you have great Americans. Thurgood Marshall was the first Black man to sit on the Supreme Court. I mean, you look at all the historical aspect of them. Talk about Colin Powell, a man who was born to Jamaican immigrants, to rise all the way to become the Secretary of State of the United States of America. And then you talk about Condoleezza Rice. I mean, you can go down and talk about all these great achievers in terms of government, in terms of sports, or other things. You know, outside of academics and various things that African Americans have contributed and continue to contribute to this great country. There's no question. There's no question on my mind that if you can tell me that there's another country on this planet Earth that have given so much to Black people or African Americans than the United States of America, I would love to go and visit that country and see what is there. I mean, I'm not saying there are countries that people haven't done well there. I mean, of course, they are. But if you look at the totality of it, in terms of how we come here, even as Africans, late arrival Africans, late arrival Caribbeans, and all of that stuff. And even though we have to go through these issues of discrimination, racism, all of that stuff, at the end of the day, we also have to acknowledge the system is such that regardless of what we go through, we also get the opportunity to be able to use that system to help build this ourselves and build our families and our communities. And that is something we cannot take away. I'm not disputing the fact that there were times when the United States government sanctioned some of these discriminatory acts. I mean, you can talk about the Fair Housing Act. You can talk about so many things that the United States government did very wrong towards African Americans and Black people in America. I mean, there are so many things. You can go back and talk about all of them. The discrimination in federal housing, discrimination in federal employment, all of that stuff happened in America, which was very horrible. Up until 50 years ago, after the Civil Rights Act that was passed by Lyndon Johnson, that basically started to officially take the US federal government from the path that it had taken prior to that Civil Rights Act. And also talking about Jim Crow laws that were existed in the southern states and even some south and northern states against African Americans. So taking out all those things into consideration and looking at them and seeing where African Americans are today, having gone through all these adversities, having gone through all this serious discrimination, serious brutality in terms of police and all that stuff, and to be where we are today, it will be an understatement to say that African Americans have done very well and they need to pat themselves on the back for withstanding all these horrors, to withstanding all this discrimination, racism, and everything, and still be thriving in this society. That's a heck of an achievement. So yesterday's Emancipation Day celebration that took place in DC was a reminder to us, fellow African Americans and Black people in America, that it was not long ago when our ancestors and that were hauled from Africa into slavery were in shackles and couldn't get the benefits of freedom that we have today in this country. So we have come a long way. We've gone through a lot, but let's take advantage of where we are today to help build our communities, build our societies, educate our children, for them to understand where we are in American history today. You know, educate them in terms of our history, in terms of African civilizations and all that stuff. I mean, let me piggyback on something that happened, took place in Texas about early this year also, where the one Texas school district, and it started, taking shape in some various states also, where they were criticizing some African American law professors about what they call critical, race theory. And out of that, they started instituting laws in some of these school districts where certain things cannot be taught in their various school districts. And most of these school districts are controlled by these conservative whites in these school districts. So they can have the decision in terms of what needs to be taught, the curriculum and all that stuff. And I get that. I get all of that. But my message also to we as Africans and African Americans and Black people here also is that we have cities in this country. And if you know the way the system works in America to some extent, you also understand that schools are local. Every school district is a locality within a local system. So basically, it's the local government that controls a lot of the things, and with the state, in conjunction with the state government. And out of that, we in predominantly African American dominant cities, states, we have to exert our authority on these teachings, the history of Africa and African American history in America, to our children. We have to stand firm on that because that is part of our history in America. I don't care what somebody thinks. To teach the history of America the way it's supposed to be taught, it's not about picking one against the other. The way slavery occurred in America, the way segregation, legal segregation, all that stuff, to teach that in schools, in our district, the district that we control, teach them to our children, educate our children to understand the past. That doesn't mean that you are teaching them something for them to use it against other race. No, you are just letting them to understand the history that their ancestors, their great grandmothers and grandfathers went through in this country. So my message to my fellow African Americans today is that, yes, yesterday was Emancipation Day in DC, and by the grace of God, we also happen to have a black woman to be the mayor of the District of Columbia on that day. And we have come a long way, but we still have more ways to go. But let's also enjoy where and what we have accomplished up to this level, and take advantage of every situation that comes our way in terms of this freedom and this opportunity that our ancestors, who did not get a benefit to see where we are as people in America today, let's make them proud by taking advantage and using the system that we have to help build our societies, develop our societies, and make our societies great for our future generations. So I'm going to end here by saying, if it's Sunday, it's the Africa Weekly Talk. God bless you guys and enjoy your week. And I wish you all the best. Peace and love.